On March 3, 2024, I watched a Japanese taxi roll into a quiet service bay in Osaka with over 620,000 kilometers on the odometer. That is nearly 400,000 miles. The engine purred like it had half the mileage. The fuel economy readout displayed numbers that would make any American driver weep. When I asked the driver how he managed it, he did not mention a single part replacement, a single additive, or a single expensive service. He described something far simpler, a driving philosophy so embedded in Japanese car culture that most drivers there do not even realize they are doing it. A method that quietly saves thousands of dollars over the life of a vehicle, while most Western drivers have never heard of it. Today, I am revealing the exact Japanese fuel technique that is transforming how drivers think about their gas pedal. And once you understand the science behind it, you will never drive the same way again. Here is what most drivers never hear. The way you use your accelerator pedal determines more about your fuel economy than almost any other factor. Not your oil, not your air filter, not even your tire pressure, your right foot. Studies have confirmed that driving style alone can swing fuel consumption by 20 to 37% in the same vehicle under the same conditions. That is not a small margin. That is the difference between filling up twice a week and filling up once. That is hundreds of dollars every single year disappearing because of habits nobody taught you to change. Japanese drivers figured this out decades ago. Their fuel prices have historically been among the highest in the developed world. Combine that with dense urban traffic, narrow streets, and a culture that values precision and efficiency, and you have the perfect environment for developing a driving technique that squeezes every possible kilometer from every liter of fuel. They call it NEN-PI driving. NEN-P translates roughly to fuel economy, but it represents something deeper. It is not about going slow. It is not about being passive. It is about understanding exactly how your engine consumes fuel and using that knowledge to your advantage every single second you are behind the wheel. The foundation of this technique starts with something most drivers completely ignore: the relationship between your accelerator pedal and your engine control unit. Your engine control unit is constantly watching what you do. Every time you press the gas pedal, sensors measure the angle, the speed of the press, and the duration. The engine control unit uses this data to calculate how much fuel to inject. But here is the part that changes everything. Aggressive inputs do not just use more fuel in that moment. They teach your engine control unit to expect aggressive behavior. The system adapts. It adjusts fuel trims. It changes shift points. It modifies throttle response. Over time, your car literally learns to be less efficient because of how you have been driving it. Japanese drivers understand this relationship intuitively. They treat the accelerator pedal like a precision instrument, not a binary switch. Where Western drivers often stomp and release, Japanese drivers apply smooth, gradual pressure that keeps the engine operating in its most efficient zone. The difference is staggering. Tests have shown that gentle acceleration to cruising speed, taking roughly 15 seconds to reach highway speeds instead of 10, can improve fuel economy by 20% or more on that acceleration event alone. Multiply that across every single acceleration you make in a day, a week, a year, and the savings become enormous. But the accelerator technique is only the first layer. The second principle is what Japanese drivers call reading the road. This is anticipatory driving taken to an extreme level. Instead of reacting to what is happening directly in front of them, they are constantly scanning far ahead, predicting traffic patterns, timing lights, and planning their speed changes minutes before they happen. The goal is simple: never waste momentum. Every time you brake, you are converting kinetic energy into heat and throwing it away. That energy came from fuel your engine burned. Japanese drivers treat braking like a personal failure, not in a reckless way that ignores safety, but in a mindset that prioritizes maintaining smooth, continuous motion. They approach red lights by lifting off the accelerator early and coasting, often timing their arrival so the light turns green just as they reach it. They leave extra following distance not for safety alone, but because it gives them space to absorb speed variations without touching the brake. They study the timing patterns of traffic signals on their regular routes. This approach explains something visitors to Japan often notice. Traffic there flows differently. It seems calmer. Cars glide rather than lurch. What looks like politeness is actually calculated efficiency happening on a massive scale. The third component is where the Japanese method truly separates itself from common Western fuel-saving advice. It involves the deliberate management of your engine's learned behaviors. Your car's engine control unit stores what are called long-term fuel trims. These are adaptive adjustments the computer makes to fuel delivery based on sensor feedback over time. When fuel trims drift too far from zero, your engine is constantly compensating for something. It might be a dirty sensor, it might be a small vacuum leak, or it might simply be the accumulated result of aggressive driving patterns that have taught the computer to run richer than necessary. Japanese drivers and technicians perform what could be called a fuel trim reset far more frequently than most Western drivers ever consider. This is not some exotic procedure. It is as simple as disconnecting the battery for 10 to 15 minutes and then allowing the engine to relearn under calm, consistent driving conditions. When you reset the engine control unit and then drive gently for the relearn period, the computer builds a new baseline that reflects efficient operation rather than aggressive habits. The engine stops compensating for ghosts. Fuel trims return closer to zero, and fuel economy quietly improves without changing a single part. Japanese technicians recommend performing this reset after any work that affects airflow or fuel delivery, after cleaning a throttle body, after replacing an air filter, after any sensor replacement. They also recommend doing it periodically as maintenance, especially if you notice your fuel economy has gradually declined without any obvious cause. The procedure costs nothing. It takes minutes, and it addresses a problem most drivers never know exists. There is a fourth principle that Japanese drivers embrace, which Western drivers often resist. It is the acceptance that smooth driving is not slow driving. The Nenpai method is not about crawling down the highway at 50 miles per hour. It is about eliminating waste in every transition. Japanese drivers accelerate briskly when needed. They merge confidently. They maintain highway speeds appropriate for traffic. What they avoid is unnecessary variation, the constant speeding up and slowing down that characterizes so much Western driving. Research confirms this approach. Tests show that varying speed between 75 and 85 kilometers per hour every 18 seconds increases fuel consumption by 20% compared to holding a steady speed. That is the cost of nervous driving. That is the price of constantly adjusting speed based on what the car immediately ahead is doing rather than what the flow of traffic requires. Japanese drivers maintain larger following distances precisely so they can hold steady speeds while others around them surge and brake. The result looks slower. The result is actually faster in average speed and dramatically more efficient in fuel consumption. The fifth element involves understanding what happens when your car stops. Japanese cities pioneered idle stop technology, where engines automatically shut off at traffic lights. But long before that technology became common, Japanese drivers were manually turning off their engines during extended stops. Tests by the Energy Conservation Center of Japan found that vehicles with idle stop systems used 5.8% less fuel overall compared to conventional operation. In urban driving, the savings jumped to 13.4%. Most striking was the discovery that vehicles spent 24% of total driving time stopped, and in urban areas that number climbed to 47%. Think about that. Nearly half of urban driving time is spent with the engine running, but the car going nowhere. Japanese drivers recognized this waste and addressed it before automakers built technology to do it automatically. Even today, drivers who understand the principle go further than the automatic systems, extending engine off time and being more aggressive about eliminating idle fuel consumption. Now here is where everything connects. These 5 principles work together as a system. Smooth acceleration teaches the ECU efficient patterns. Anticipatory driving reduces the need for braking. Periodic fuel trim resets clear accumulated inefficiencies. Steady speed driving eliminates wasteful variation. And idle management stops burning fuel when you are going nowhere. Any single principle alone provides modest improvement. Combined, they transform how a vehicle consumes fuel. Japanese drivers do not think of this as hypermiling or extreme fuel saving. It is simply how they drive. The techniques are taught in driving schools. They are reinforced by in-vehicle fuel economy displays that provide real-time feedback. They are supported by a culture that views waste as shameful, and they produce results that seem impossible to Western drivers, who have never learned any alternative to the stomp-and-go style that dominates American roads. The science supports every aspect of this approach. Engine efficiency maps show that internal combustion engines achieve peak fuel efficiency at moderate loads and moderate revolutions per minute, the exact conditions that gentle acceleration creates. Aerodynamic drag increases exponentially with speed, making the cost of speed variation at highway velocities severe. Oxygen sensors and fuel trim systems genuinely do adapt to driving patterns, and resetting them genuinely does improve economy when followed by efficient driving. None of this is myth. None of this is theory. It is engineering reality that Japanese drivers have converted into daily practice. What makes this information so frustrating is that it has been available for decades. Auto manufacturers know it. Engineers understand it completely. The data has been published repeatedly. Yet driving instruction in most Western countries teaches none of it. Driver education focuses on safety and rules, not efficiency. Fuel economy tips that do reach the public are usually simplified to the point of uselessness, or presented as extreme measures for obsessive hypermilers rather than as standard practice for normal people. The good news is that changing takes nothing but attention. You do not need to buy anything. You do not need to modify your car. You do not need special skills. You just need to become conscious of what your right foot is doing and start treating the accelerator like the precision instrument it actually is. You need to lift your eyes and read the road ahead instead of fixating on the bumper in front of you. You need to reset your fuel trims occasionally and give your ECU a chance to learn efficient patterns. And you need to accept that smoothness and efficiency are not the same as slowness and timidity. The driver of that Osaka taxi had been doing this for over 30 years. His car looked new. His fuel costs were half what drivers with similar mileage typically pay. His engine had never been rebuilt. When I mentioned that these techniques were unknown to most American drivers, he seemed genuinely surprised. "Why would anyone drive any other way?" he asked. "Every time you waste fuel, you waste money. Every time you brake hard, you wear your vehicle. Every time you accelerate aggressively, you shorten engine life. Why would efficiency not be the goal? I had no good answer. Because we were never taught, I said. But now you have been. The information is in your hands. What you do with it determines whether you keep paying a hidden tax on every mile you drive or start keeping that money for yourself. There is one final principle that separates Japanese drivers from the rest of the world: patience during the relearn phase. After a fuel trim reset, most Western drivers return immediately to their old habits. They stomp the accelerator at the first green light. They race to merge. They treat the reset as a magic fix rather than a fresh start. Japanese drivers understand that the first 50 to 100 kilometers after a reset are critical. They drive deliberately during this period, with gentle accelerations, smooth cruising, and extended idle periods at operating temperature. They are teaching the engine control unit, ECU, how they want the engine to behave going forward. This distinction matters enormously. A reset, followed by aggressive driving, teaches the engine control unit aggressive patterns all over again. The fuel trims climb back to where they were. Nothing improves. But a reset, followed by calm, intentional driving, establishes a new baseline that persists for thousands of kilometers. The engine runs leaner where it should. Shift points optimize for efficiency. Throttle response smooths out. The car literally becomes a different vehicle because its brain learned different habits. I have watched drivers perform this exact sequence. Reset the engine control unit, ECU. Drive gently for a week. Check their fuel economy. The numbers jump by 10%, sometimes 15%, with no other changes. Same gas, same routes, same car, different learned behaviors in the computer. This is free efficiency sitting in every vehicle on the road, unclaimed because nobody taught drivers it existed. The taxi driver in Osaka told me something that stuck with me. He said in Japan they have a saying about driving. A good driver is invisible. No one notices them. No one remembers their presence on the road. They create no disturbances. They flow like water. A bad driver is memorable. They cut through traffic. They accelerate loudly. They brake suddenly. Everyone notices them, and everyone avoids them. That philosophy captures the entire Japanese fuel method. Invisibility through smoothness. Efficiency through calm. Savings through awareness. It does not require sacrifice or suffering. It simply requires understanding what your car is actually doing when you drive it and choosing to work with the engineering instead of against it. If this changed how you think about your accelerator pedal, hit like so more drivers see it. Subscribe if you want more techniques that the industry knows but rarely shares. Drop a comment telling me your current fuel economy. I want to know your starting point so we can measure improvement. The most expensive fuel is not the fuel that costs the most per gallon. It is the fuel you burn without ever realizing you did not have to. Now you know how to stop.